Good night, everybody. We are live.
Evening blessings and salutations.
Good
Good
night,
evening,
all.
everyone. Good evening.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening, everyone.
We'll wait till some more people join us.
We'll, we'll practice that next time.
ah, oh, why am I getting um my YouTube on? How was everybody's day today?
It was a good day. I got to give a quick shout out to some folks. Shout out to some fine folks up in Detroit, Michigan. My boy Bush, what's up? I know he's looking. Give him a shout. Also some amazing quote unquote people from earlier today. So I'm gonna give them a shout. It's no Carlo names.
Oh Jesus. Lord.
So yeah.
Okay, good. Let me bring okay, Shelly. Got you back. Um we will start out the evening first by was there any post that was posted this week that garnered your interest? You enjoyed reading it, you learned something new, whatever the case may be. Um, Louis,
You want me to start?
yeah, start.
Just a post that I saw. I think it was. I think Lucian posted it actually. Um, post that says, "He work, I work. He spoil me, I spoil him. If I ain't got it, he do. When he ain't got it, I do. Get you a teammate. Get you a teammate. Get somebody that's you guys are together on the same level, on a journey, rising to the top. That's it.
Amen.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm saying, I mean, where that's at.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
But remember,
let me
you
find
have to
that.
be willing to be the teammate, the other part of
Oh,
the team. Oh, okay.
ready and waiting to sign up. Where do I sign?
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Oh
That's
wow.
what I'm saying.
Come on, of course, of course.
Okay.
Are you kidding me?
Okay.
Of course,
Yeah.
no
how,
doubt, no doubt.
how about you, Trina?
Um, I haven't been on Facebook for a while, for a couple of days, really. I think the last post that I saw was Kemma had put up a video. It was a short movie, and it was this woman yelling at this man, degrading this guy. I liked it for different reasons, but it was actually talking about what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about like emotional abuse and verbal abuse. And we learned last night that women, that's how women, I didn't see it. I just saw that the woman was very cruel in the way she was talking to the guy. And I was like, why is she being so mean and harsh and stuff like that? But last night I learned that that's actually how a woman to show up by abusing men. It'll be verbally and it'll be emotionally, and she was terrible. She was horrible. So that I saw that a couple of days ago, and that still stand out with me. Yeah.
Cool, cool. How about you, Mr. Lucian?
I really like the post that Miss Alice, I don't want to say her name, or Alice Victoria Henry.
Uh huh.
This young lady was talking about like things that women want, and and men also about showing up. Everybody wants something, but then are you willing to, you know, um, do that thing like what you asked Louis just now? Like, is he going to be, going to, be a part of that team?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very interesting because when you look at the world that it is right now, it's like the whole dynamic in relationships are changing. But some people still want to hold on to that same like older stereotype, and it's not working. You know what I'm saying? I mean, let's say like a small percentage. I mean, back in the day, once you had a job, your wife could stay at home and everybody could be fed. But nowadays, the way how our economy is set up, unless you're making six figures, then it's going to be hard for you to be a stay at home, to have a stay at home wife, unless y'all are just going to be like living like really, really, really moderate, or frugal. But it's just about, understanding that and being a team player in this day and age is what it takes to make a relationship work. You know.
True. True. Um, how about either? Well, tonight we have Shelly Gums, who is joining us, and we have Shemet. How about you two? Were there any posts that you all saw? And it doesn't even have
Wait,
to be an L&E.
Debbie, question. Could you like introduce Shelly and what she does and stuff like that?
Sure, sure.
A little
Shelly is
background
joining us
history
as
and
since
Miss
we're
Shelly.
talking about this is the beginning of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Um, and Shelly works for Women's Coalition and she's the crisis counselor. So we invited her. I've invited her before, but we invited her to come and talk on this topic. We're going to revisit it again at the end of the month, and throughout the year, the next year of LME, we will touch on this subject because it's so. There's so much that we cannot get. We can't even talk about a third of it in an hour and a half. So, welcome. Thank you for taking the charge to come on with us tonight. And then we have returning with us, Miss Shemet Gordon, um, who is, part of the team as well. This is like what, your third or fourth time on with us. Um, and she's going, well, throughout the night, we're going to have her read a poem from her book. And look at mine right here. Um, welcome, ladies. Thank you for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
Were there any posts that resonated with either one of you guys this week in LNE?
Well, actually, the post that Carlos put up today, Christian Carlos put up today, what's hard about dating you? I found it a very funny question because my answer to it was, well, somebody would have to tell me because, I really don't think it's hard to date me, honestly. But, other people's opinion of me may make the difference. So I thought that was very, very interesting. And so has nobody told you anything or anything like that if you reflect? But then that's not really why it's hard to date me from my perspective, but from somebody else's perspective. And that's just information for me. It's not necessarily validation. So I guess that just means, and like I said, like I responded in the post, for me, it's acceptance. I'm very accepting of people. You give me information about you, and I know how to make a decision as to how my relationship or my interaction with you goes from there. I don't think that makes it hard. I just think that, it makes it interesting.
I was going to pick that one too. How about you, Shimon?
Well, one that spoke out to me was one that Pinky had posted on Wellness Wednesday about therapy is for everyone, and I just thought that hit home. So it's important. I think in the thread it said something about for men, but not just men, for women. I think they were quoting Kevin on stage, and he was like, he does therapy on himself, he does couples therapy with his wife. I just think it's important for people to understand why are they behaving the way they do, how do we interact, how can we make these relationships better. I thought that was a good one.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, and it's so funny because we months ago we talked about um, Bobby Brown, and I remember his wife was saying that like they do family counseling, they do individual counseling, and I think him and her do counseling without the kids as well. And it wasn't necessarily that there was anything necessarily going on with her, but to make the family whole because of so much death and just his abuse and everything, it affects the whole body. So they each had like individual but also family counseling, and so that was interesting to me. That we talk about it a lot more because again in our community everybody kind of shuns away from it, but I say everybody should at least try it once. You never know till you try. Well, tonight we have decided that since this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, that with all of the headlines, most currently the Maya Marcano, we want to send out our condolences to her family. You have the Gabby Petito. You have, R. Kelly, got convicted for all this alleged abuse. It's just a rampant. It's always existed, but it just seems like it's so much more rampant. And when I was asking Shelly what is something that we should kind of talk about, and she talked about social grooming. Um, a lot of times, I guess we focus on the victim and why you stayed, or if you saw something, why you didn't do something. But a lot of times, people know there's things going on, and nobody really wants to get involved. But then we also create a society that kind of enables it to even happen in the first place. Um, so you want to start something specific? You want to start with, Kelly? You want us to ask you?
I guess a definition. I guess definitions
Sure.
are always a good way to start. Good night, everybody. How you doing?
You know,
One of the things that when I was talking to Debbie about community grooming, which is what happens, is that we've developed a society where everybody's afraid to say anything, and until somebody dies, then everybody knows after the person's dead, which means that they knew while they were alive, but the fear of doing anything causes us to create a safety net for the perpetrators. And so because of that, it puts us in a bad situation. It puts us in a kind of cyclical craziness, because we keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, and it doesn't work. And so the community tends to suffer because of it, because people are afraid, what's going to happen, not understanding that leaving sometimes is not only more difficult, but it's the most dangerous time for anybody to leave a relationship. And part of domestic violence working, I mean, talking about domestic violence, part of domestic violence working is isolation. And I don't know any abusers that are not everybody else's best friend. And so community grooming really, really does well. You mean everybody likes the person who then you find out has done something wrong, or has been the abuser, or has been the rapist, has been doing, strange things that you didn't think that they would do. And our response to it usually is, well, I didn't know that man could have do something like that. I didn't know she was like that, or whatever the situation is, you know what I mean? And so because it becomes very, very difficult when we see something and we don't say something or do something about it, that cycle continues. And so that's the reason why domestic violence continues to grow, because we kind of grow up learning, if I get hurt and I'm 5 and I scream and I cry and nobody does anything, when I get molested, everybody's going to say, oh, he done mess with little girls, but they're not going to do anything about it. And so the little girl now feels that she doesn't have any place to go. Then she becomes very accustomed to being sexually abused, and then she gets to 13, and then we say, oh, she just hot and she's out there and she's selling her body for this, not realizing that she's already been exposed. And then what would happen after that is that she now becomes somebody who has sex, and sex produces children, not parents, and then we don't have parenting that's going on, and then the cycle starts again, because now this is all becoming a habit of what's happening. And because of that, we get stuck in the cycle, and the cycle continues to grow, and it just gets really, really, really hard. But I still have hope, which is why I do what I do. I still have hope that we can be better. We can start to see each other more as humans, and that we stop making excuses, because nobody really talks about the batterers or the abusers, or we don't talk about them. We always talk about, oh, the victim should have this and the victim should have that, and the
Right.
victim blaming and the victim blaming, but we don't do much about, well, why is it that he had to watch this 8-year-old girl and think that she was somebody to have sex with? Or why would he watch the mother of his children and hit her in her head with a baseball bat? You know what I mean? Or why he gonna run her with a machete? Or why does he think he has to control her? Why is he going to call her by names out in public? We don't say, why he doing that? We like, well, why is she taking it? That's usually our question. Why
Right.
is she taking it? Why she don't leave? Not why doesn't he stop? And
Right.
that's the change that really needs to happen.
Wow. I know one of the things that you talked about too, when we had our conversation yesterday, was, and kind of along the lines of what Pinky said, that, you know, when you see an abuser, it's usually anger coming out in a physical, emotional, verbal way. But a lot of it comes from insecurity. Um, Whereas for women, because it does happen in the reverse, it's usually verbal um, over a period of time. So um, that was kind of interesting. I mean, you like we broke it down, but when you think about it, yeah, I guess we're so sensitive and we can see the physical scars, but the verbal, emotional, you don't see that, so you don't really pay attention to it. You know, um, in your work, do you see that men are willing to, even men who have been the abuser have been willing to talk about why they do it, and if there's any remorse, or is it because of whatever's happened with them that causes them to feel like it's okay to do this, that they're not forthcoming with, feeling sorry and trying to do something to change their behavior?
Well, I mean, we have male clients up at the coalition, and once they do start to talk, they just talk, right? Because they're not, we don't usually give our men a voice or a space to have a voice. It's very difficult because we've never really allowed them to have a conversation about emotions. It's not the manly thing to do. I mean, even when we have little boys, they're 2 and 3, and it's like, don't cry, he's a boy. You know what I mean? And so they never learn to express any kind of emotion. And so they grow up doing the same thing. If they're hurt, they're not going to tell anybody because they don't want to be called a punk. You know what I mean? They don't want to seem less than manly to society. And so, because of that, learning to have a conversation about emotion, they could talk about anything. If you wanted to listen to them talk about sports, cars, anything that has to do with something outside of an emotion, and they'll talk a lot, which means that they do have the verbiage. But then when it comes to them talking about their own emotion, it gets difficult. But once you give them the space to have the conversation and you're willing to not judge them and accept that this is how they feel and this is a reality for them and this is where they may feel vulnerable or weak and still see them as a man and not start to, we have this tendency, you know, forget what your mouth says is your facial expression that stop people from talking to you a lot of times because they say something and you're like, that's the end of the conversation. You know what I mean? Because even though you haven't said something, that says a whole lot. You know what I mean? So being able to allow them to talk about emotions without judgment is something that is becoming more frequent because we're giving them the spaces. Not only that, we're not so interested in them being broken anymore. You know what I mean? We were okay with them being broken because then everybody had a role and it was fine, but we're changing from that. We're growing up. As a people, we're growing up. The emotional stagnation is starting to dissipate. So not everybody has to stay at 15 and 16 and yell and scream and be angry or cuss and carry on and be mad with somebody because, the domestic violence of, cheating, has been accepted for 100 years. And so we don't think that there's emotional damage that's done. You know what I mean? We're starting to look at it as a real thing now. And so because of that, we can get the conversations going. And it's nice to have the conversations going. Because one brother have a conversation, he can talk to another brother and they'll understand each other. You know what I mean? And that's the way to get it done.
True. Did
Yeah,
anybody want to ask?
Deborah.
Go ahead, Lucy.
Yeah, Shemet wanted to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, Shelley, what I thought of when you were speaking earlier, is there a safe way for someone to approach someone who they think is an abuser? So, like you have a friend, a cousin, something, and you have an inkling that they might be abusing their partner. Is there a safe way to talk about that or to bring that up?
Pay attention. You know, there is no textbook way, and I think that's what makes, therapy, counseling difficult for some people, and it makes it easier for those of us that are very accepting of people because you have to see where the person is. Anger is not an excuse for abuse, but it causes it. You know what I mean? Because it's the end result of hurt. Most people aren't really angry, they're hurt. and they don't know how to express it because we didn't allow them to express it. And if I want you to do what I want you to do, because domestic violence is about power and control, and I know that making you afraid is what's going to make you do what I want you to do, then that's what I'll do. So if you're going to approach somebody and you know that this person is going to get aggravated because you know this person, don't trigger them. If you ask questions, right, and not, why you do that? That's not a question, that's a threat. And I know that we tend to do that, but I noticed that this and this and this happens. So what happens when this happens? You know what I mean? Like, have the conversation. Give them some information as to what you're talking about, because most of the time they don't realize it. And then if you talk to them afterwards, they'll be like, well, I don't even know why I did that. But something else is going on. So if you're going to approach them and it's somebody that you know is an abuser and you have a relationship with them, talk to them about that from a non-judgmental point of view. The fact that you already think that they're abusers means that you see something, but then don't go in and say, I know you're beating that girl, no? Where you beating her? And your first response is going to be, I don't beat she. What she tell you? Right? It's like, you don't get angry a lot. Something to be going on. You had a bad day at work, even though that's not an excuse either. But try to figure out what makes them comfortable enough to talk to you, because there may be some other issues and underlying factors, because a lot of people are stuck in their past and little things trigger them. And so they still acting like they're on the playground, got beat up the person in order to get their candy.
Wow. Wow.
I like what you said, Shelley. I this summer, between this summer and maybe this summer, I would say I know two young ladies that got murdered from domestic violence, and I wanted to ask you because this seemed like it's increasing lately. They're not married or were living with the people, they probably were dating them, or, what I guess is called dating violence, I'm not sure. But, and I noticed the behavior of people who are in abusive relationships tend to keep things secret. They tend to keep to themselves, right? Isolation, like you said. They're ashamed that they're in these situations, so they don't tell anyone. Do you think it's wise, or do you think it would be advisable for people who find themselves in these situations to actually share with family members, get more family members involved, that not to attack the abuser, because of course you got to try to keep them from anger, but do you think it would be best to get more people involved, talking to the abuser, getting the abuser to a place where they understand the behavior before it ends up in murder? Because these were two people I know this summer, but I've known young ladies over a period of time, young ladies who were in high school that were just dating someone in high school and ended up getting murdered. And I know one of the young ladies, they were dating the same guy. This was several years ago. They were dating the same guy, and the second family moved the first family moved their daughter out of the city, so she was kept safe. But the second one, who got murdered, the family didn't know about it, and then she got murdered. So is it okay, or do you think it's advisable for people to get more family members involved?
It depends on the family, and that's just the truth, right? Some people's family, if this is the little sister and they have a big brother who has an anger management problem also, not necessarily, but it's about how you approach it. There are ways to say to the family, well, I don't feel comfortable about this, so that they have an inkling of what's going on, and so they can start to keep you safe. But remember, the abuser is insecure about themselves, right? That's why the power and control becomes necessary, because that's the way to get past their insecurity. So they're always going to be insecure. And approaching them about it is going to put them in a place where they feel like they've lost more power. So it's going to depend on the family you have, and it's going to depend on how you approach the situation. Because not everybody is going to be reasonable, and then we haven't even gotten into anybody that has a mental illness, so it doesn't click that this is not okay. You know what I mean? But for most people, if you make me feel bad, I'm going to get more violent, which is why most people stay silent. You know what I mean? Because as soon as anybody, you don't even have to be doing anything. I can't tell you how many people they're having a conversation with a cousin that the boyfriend doesn't know, who's insecure and needs to maintain the power and control, and they'll get beat for talking to their cousin. You understand what I'm saying? So it really depends on the family. It depends on how you approach it, and it depends on the person. Sometimes it's best to walk away, but sometimes it's just best to, file a restraining order.
Does restraining order really work?
It's not that it's not that a restraining order really works or doesn't work. It's a good remedy because most people are not, even if they're abusers, they have to get to a certain level for them to not be afraid to go to jail. You understand what I'm saying? So if the court knows though, then everybody starts to look at them. And so even though the criminal justice system is the criminal justice system, right? Okay. It's the criminal justice system, which is
Nothing
why
behavioral.
every time you hear anything in court, the perpetrator is innocent until proven guilty, which means the victim is guilty until proven innocent, right?
Crazy.
And so because of that, it becomes very, very difficult for us to continue to do that. And that's one of the reasons why restraining orders are there, especially civil restraining orders, because it's not a criminal thing. Everybody gets to say their piece, right? And you get to put it out there that something's happening to me and I don't want it to happen to me anymore. And sometimes my family members aren't the people to go to because there may be domestic violence in my family, which is why I was targeted for this relationship, because there's certain things about me that has made me familiar with abuse, that makes me want to be self-sacrificing, that makes me not have enough love for myself, that makes me not know myself, that makes me feel that being what they want me to be is the right thing to do and not me being myself, so that we can have a team like Louis was talking about before. A lot of those things come into play.
You know what I've noticed too, Shelly? We have like a serious problem in our community with these older guys, like kind of like ruining these young girls, man. You know, um, I'm sure you're familiar with it, the little Hess man and this and that man waiting by across the street by Midland to pick up these girls them in a fancy ride. And the thing about it too is like they don't understand the long term effects of this thing. You know what I'm saying? It really hinders a lot of females' growth, because then that's when like it mightn't look like if it's abusive, but it actually is, and girls learn like a false perception of what love is from a dude who is just like really and truly taking advantage of them. So
Emotional stagnation.
yeah,
Because
even
they're
if it's not like
chronologically old, but they're not emotionally old.
right, right. So it's just like I mean it's rampant in the Virgin Islands, and then it's just like people act like if it's like nothing ain't going on, like it's like every other day. But then you see these emotionally scarred women that can't have relationships because of what they've been through, you know. And then the guy, after he done with that one, he move on to the next young chick, do the same thing to them. So it's like repeatedly, having the same, brokenness within our society, and it's ruining our relationships, you know.
It
Exactly.
does.
And it's so funny you say that because how many growing up, you always used to hear Hessman waiting at midnight. But how come police officers weren't there? Like
Exactly.
it's like all these little things. It's sort of like my cousin said yesterday. You have that family member that you would never leave your a child with. Everybody knows this, but nobody ever really does anything. It's just that you kind of like gleam over it. Again, with the whole grooming and bystander kind of thing, because it's like you know it, but nobody does anything about it. crazy.
That's exactly what happens. And
Um,
that's where the
Robert
problem comes
Moorhead,
in.
yeah, Robert Moorhead made a comment.
Hmm.
You want me to read it? You want to read it, Debbie?
Sure. It says men are from Mars and women are from Venus. We have been moved away from the understanding of roles. Our community as a whole and as individuals. We put titles which create stigmas. It is hard to see how bad my behavior is if that is the environment that I grew up in. Anger is the reaction to an underlying emotion that is not identified by the individual.
Very true.
But the sad thing too is that these things have been going on for years. I think, of course, we hear about it and see it more because of social media, because access to phone, pictures and videos and all this kind of stuff. So it gets out there more. But I mean, at the end of the day, this has been going on for many, many, many years. Um,
But that go back to what you were saying earlier, Shelley. Like the raising up in broken homes to be the foundation of this problem. It's like where Robert is saying, you grew up in an environment. We spoke about that, and a lot of people don't know what we're talking about. But we were talking about last night people growing up in environments where the language, the verbiage is just, vulgar, saying certain words is just no problem to parents as well as, I know people who have called their parents bees, look here, B, that's how they're talking to their mother. Now we look at that because we were raised in different environments and we were told that, that behavior is not acceptable. But in some areas, and I in Americas, I will say that, like if you go in certain areas where the ghetto areas, you'll find language that's just unacceptable. Is this abuse when that's what they know and that's how they speak normally? My question is, if that's normal for you to call your mother just in conversation, hey B, good morning, how you doing, right? And then you meet somebody and you start talking to them the same way. Like, hey, come on, that's your wife or your girlfriend. Hey B. Now I might be like, oh, that's disrespectful, but that's their norm. Like Robert said, like how do they know that is not acceptable because that's where they grew up in. That's what how they talk, how their parents talk, how their friends, relatives, everybody that talk. Is that still considered abuse, or how do we look at situations like that when that's the environment in which they were raised? How do we?
Well, at that point in time, it still is abuse, right? Because it's kind of like the same thing I was talking about earlier. So I'll bring it around so that I guess it makes more sense, or I can make a better correlation with it, right? If you have a child who's sexually molested at 5, right, and continues to be sexually molested at 16, right? So from 5 to 16, they've been sexually molested, right? When you see them out and they're with somebody, you call them a whore, right? Because they've been sleeping with people and sleeping with all these people, and they're sleeping with people. Most people who've been sexually abused have been groomed, and there's something that makes them keep quiet. Usually there's an exchange of money, right? So after a while, it becomes voluntary prostitution because I know I'm going to get hurt. I also know I can't do anything about it. So this is something I'm going to do. She's not going to think she's been abused because when it was abuse, nobody did anything. So there was no validation for her at 5, right? That was an abusive behavior. So now she's growing up and this is just normal. If you're going to get into a relationship with somebody that has gone through that, you as a person need to know that. Have the conversation because maybe what they need is information. If you are not somebody who's okay with somebody calling you a B, you have the conversation with them, but then don't get into a relationship with somebody who you know is going to be disrespectful for you, because then that now puts you at a bad position because you're going to constantly try to save the person, and we make excuses. And like we were talking about last night, we tend to get into savior mode, right? We tend to get into savior mode. So we want to we want to love them right. while we're losing ourselves, and then we're no longer in a relationship. The entire relationship is about making the other person okay. But if you feel uncomfortable with somebody calling you a B because they grew up in that kind of environment, and because this is what they do, and that's what their entire family does, if you yourself don't say something, letting them know this makes you feel uncomfortable, and they continue to do it after you've told them, and you stay, then there's something in you that you need to check, right? Because if somebody's going to, if you hear them
I
call
want to add.
somebody
I
else
just
that, they,
Go ahead.
oh,
no. Go ahead. Go
okay.
ahead.
It's a matter of where we see ourselves, right? Nobody volunteers to be a victim, but some of us have been victims of so many things for so long that we don't even realize that we're being victimized anymore, right? And so it's at some point coming to self-actualization, self-awareness, and realizing that we have to become accountable for our own self. We can't fix anybody. They have to want to fix themselves. We, even as a counselor, my last name is Gums, not God. I can't fix a soul. You know what I mean? I can give them information. I can tell them, maybe if you do this because this is coming from this place, you'd have better results with this. Because this is an outside perspective. But they have to be willing to deal with that, right? If they're comfortable, and it's like back to something I said last night, which I live by. For some people, better the evil I know than the good I don't, right? I don't know what I'm going to get if I stop doing this. I'm accustomed to this. And I can always go back to where pain is a constant for me. Being out of pain is weird. And because being out of pain is weird, I may not be willing to get out of it because I don't know what's going to happen. And if I don't know what's going to happen, I'm going to be more afraid of being in something new. And that's outside of a relationship. We do that with work.
Right.
We do that with our jobs. We do that with our friendships. We do that with the people around the corner. We do that with people that we see on the street. You know, it becomes part of who we are. We start to accept being treated badly or hearing bad things and not saying anything about it. Because yes, it's peace, and silence is definitely something that we think is safety. But it's not. It's a setup for us getting killed
I just
on every level.
wanted to touch on. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on what Pinky mentioned about, you know, uh, children, or I guess daughters, calling or referring to the moms, as the B word. And I think that's probably in some areas it's probably used, and this is just a little segue. It's probably equivalent to when the N word is used, but it can become traumatic now when it's used in a derogatory, form, because people might say that and we're like, yeah, yo, what's up, that and that, and word, or yeah, what's up, B. But then when you start to talk and down at someone, then it becomes a very, traumatic experience. You have women that actually, it's the same like when women refer to some men and speak down at them, and women and men and vice versa. Men speak down at women. So I think, that word in itself has there's a lot of dual meaning, or even more. And the N word itself, it's how it's used. And
Yeah,
it's
I think
so
that's maybe what we're trying to ask. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like the motive or the intention
yeah,
behind the word that's
that's the
used.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. It can be, you see, some people use it as a term of affection, like, hey, what's up, B? Like some, you know what I mean? But then there's times when that can really be
So that's what I'm saying.
derogatory.
Like, is it
Yeah,
if you don't talk like that normally, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't call your father the N word, you don't call your mother the B word. If you don't talk like that normally,
culturally, that's been accepted culturally for so long now. You know what I mean? I think. Um,
Piggybacking on, oh, go ahead. No.
well, no, go ahead. I think
Well, the thing that's happening in our society is like, we're taking like words that are degrading and
Normalizing it.
trying to make them into something that's cool and hip. But People don't understand programming. Um, this is a program. You know what I'm saying? Beforehand, I remember when I first heard the word nigga, the first time was on Dr. Dre's The Chronic. You know what I'm saying? My partner was like, man, listen to this bop bop. I went out there, bought the album, and I was like, you know, nigga this, nigga that, nigga this. And I'm just like, okay. But I never heard it before, like, used like that. You know what I'm saying? So everything the stimuli that we're getting, that we're receiving, is a sort of programming to subliminally downgrade ourselves and our family members. You know, you have to have a certain amount of understanding to see it for what it is. You know what I'm saying? Because most people, it's just music, it's just this, it's just that. Like, it's just programming. You don't see movies out there promoting strong black influences, but you see a lot of slave movies. You see a lot of movies that degrading blacks. And the thing about it, you have to think about what happens to yourself after you see these movies. You leave the theater angry. Why do you leave the theater angry? Because that's what that movie was supposed to do to you. You know,
Yeah.
we don't pay enough attention of the words we use, the things we look at, and the music that we listen to. All of that is programming. So when you see somebody that's not even, you see, we try to think that it's a social and economic problem, but it's not. Because you go to a rich family house who are allowing their children to listen to rap music, they calling their mother bitches too and hoes. Bitch, I didn't want that for Christmas. Straight up. And this is a fact. So it all depends on how you groom your children. And you as a parent, how much emphasis you want to give to, like, raising your child in the correct manner. You know how to raise your child correctly. It's just you just don't think it's necessary to do so.
True.
Right.
So
True.
that's
And it's
that's
also
definitely.
changing the trajectory because it's so funny because just tonight I had a conversation with my godson because yesterday morning my grandbaby, I told her good morning and she looked at me and she didn't say nothing, and she never is like rude to me. And so my daughter started to get on her, and I was like, and she just kept saying, she's like, you didn't tell grandma good morning, and she just said okay, okay. And I'm like, wait, what's going on here, right? So
Mhm.
inclination is she needs some licks, right? But I don't have to do that to her. I'm just saying that's just our innate inclination, right? So I tell her, I said good morning, and she looked at me and she said okay. I said, okay, we're not going to do this tonight, Gabby. I said good morning, and she said good morning. And I was telling her dad last night, I mean tonight, that one of the things you have to do is you have to be consistent. And the whole thing is, oh, she needs licks. No, because the problem is that when she goes to school, what number one, she's four. What are you shaping and trying to, who are you trying to raise? You don't want her to fear you. You want her to respect you. But you also have to be consistent. And so I told him, I said, we have to do this different because just because it was done to you, your parents, so forth, doesn't mean that that was the correct thing. Because at the end of the day, what are you trying to raise? You have the responsibility of raising this child, and the decisions you make for her now and shape her while she's 5 and 6 years old can really determine who she's going to end up being. And I think in this whole domestic violence, it's like some things we just do because this is what we know, this is what we've seen, but we have to be intentional about, is it really giving us the outcome that we want? Because you hit. So what are you teaching? If we're consistently beating on someone, what are we teaching them? That beating gets the result that you want? It's inflicting fear, but the person isn't respecting you. And I
Well,
see that with my own children. They were in an abusive situation, and so for their thing, it was all about fear. It was not about respect. and I see how it's affected them and how they show up in the world today in relationships. So I just feel like if we want to make a difference, because at the end of the day, you can't change the other person, but you can change the decisions you make, and you can also change how you feel. Because one of the things you said last night I really appreciated was that we have to instill, even in especially in the victim, confidence within yourself, who you are, loving yourself, because if you really truly love yourself, you would not put yourself in that kind of a situation.
But Debbie,
Hmm.
you say this, right?
Hmm.
And you can plug as much love as you want into that child, but if you allow that child to continuously watch TV,
That.
movies, social media, they are going to take exactly what you taught them and switch it around to that. I mean, we have so many beautiful women. I mean, like drop dead gorgeous women who have like insecurity issues. And I'm just like, what? But then it's just because of like, once again, is what this thing, because if you're saying like this is the epitome of beauty, you know what I'm saying? And you're just like, okay,
Tell
but
you
I'm
open
not
them out.
going to, huh? Me, how we say?
I'm telling you open them out.
But
Oh God.
but
But
this is the thing though. This is the thing. We're talking about domestic violence, right? And we're talking about the majority, and I did not look up the statistics, right? We talk about the women that's insecure and broken, right? And yes, they are. A lot of time it's the women that's being beaten, they're being abused emotionally, verbally by broken men. Yes, so the society and the TV and the music and all these things is portraying an image that is hurting women, yes, but they're also portraying an image that hurting men.
Mm-hmm.
This thing is not woman or man. This is
Right.
something that we have to
Good
understand.
opinion.
Carlos had put up something the other day, I think, about that, where the things we watch, how it affects us on a subconscious level. But he had put up something months ago. This lady, she was dressed in this very sexy, revealing outfit, high heel pumps. If you watch any music video, hip hop video, the women them are wearing two-piece bathing suit, high heels, stilettos, whatever, whatever, and men are fully clothed in hoodies. And I was like, is it hot or is it cold? Because why is she wearing a two-piece bathing suit and he wearing a hoodie? He wearing his sneakers, he wearing his baggy jeans. And guess what? We talking about it, right? But this is a $1 billion industry. We buying it up. We saying we don't let our kids watch it. They're watching it. We're saying domestic violence, abuse, dating violence, is not just happening in the ghettos or in the lower socioeconomic areas. Because in the rich areas, in the millionaire areas, that guy that I can't remember his name right now because I'm a little nervous, but this happens across the board. And it ain't happening just in America. We got videos because it got places in other countries. And I know we probably want to talk about other countries where this is happening and they don't even have TVs inside of their houses, because religion also plays a role in this. So it's not just TV, it's a society, it's religion, it's a practice, it's a behavior that's been going on not just for thousands of years. We have to break the mentality and change the way that we see humanity, period, how we see ourselves, not just how women see themselves, but how men also see themselves and how they see themselves together in a relationship when they come together as one. Because I could love myself, you could love yourself, we gonna respect each other in a relationship. If we come together loving ourselves, we're gonna respect each other in the relationship. It's when we come with our problems, and we are coming with problems. We are coming with problems. We are coming from some place of brokenness, whether it was in our childhood or in relationships, because at the end of the day, we have no control sometimes the relationships we pick up. We might meet a very nice guy and we like him, blah, blah, blah. And the next thing you know, not we might, it has happened. It has happened to me. We meet nice people and it end up being not what you intended it for be, what you thought it was going to be. So what do you do then? And it do take away something from you. Maya Angelou said one time, one of her poems is, if I keep letting you peck at me, you gonna keep picking me until you pick. Not, I can't remember the exact poem. But in relationship, we have all been picked upon till barely anything was left. And you got to build yourself back up. So we are coming broken, Lucian.
But
Right.
we
So
also
let
have
me.
to what Lucien was saying before, though. You know what I mean? And to what you were saying before that. My thing is, I understand what you're saying, and that's the reason why I was saying that how we perceive things and the changes that we want to make. Because the person who would call their mother a B is not going to call their boss an ass. You understand what I'm
Exactly.
saying? So you're choosing who you want to do what you're doing to. It is not, it's not to say that they don't know how to do better. They choose when to do better.
Mm.
And that's the thing. If you're choosing to treat the people who are supposed to be your support and supposed to be the people who are going to hold you up, and when something is wrong with you, they're going to be there for you. If you're going to treat them badly and treat the people who don't really have any invested interest in you, like if they are supposed to be treated with respect, then that's a choice, Pinky. You understand what I'm saying? So yes,
And
it's abusive, and
Totally.
they know it's abusive. They're just choosing who to abuse. But we have to have conversations, even if you, if even if your children, you can't really get away from what your children are watching, right? But you know my T-shirt. You know what I mean? Sex produces children, not parents, right? And so if we don't start to have the conversations about those things, all the information that they're going to get is from outside themselves. When do we sit down and talk about why you think she wearing that two-piece bathing suit and he have on that hoodie? Have we ever had that conversation? I mean, my poor child would be tired of me. I mean, she's grown now. She has her own child. But, you know, do we have that conversation? Don't laugh. I seriously, don't laugh.
No, that's
But,
good
you know,
though.
do you have that conversation with the children? Do you have the conversation about why do you think objectifying a woman is okay and a man in a hood with a baggy pants on is appropriate? You know what I mean? Why don't you see that something? How do you feel about what's going on there? And let them explain to you what they're getting from it so you can then change the information that they have. Because if you don't have the conversation, guess who's giving them all their information? You know what I mean?
so
And how do we break domestic violence if they don't know to do better because we don't know how to tell them to do better because we're afraid to talk about emotions and have a conversation because children are supposed to be seen, not heard, which was a lie.
so two things, Shelley. One, I think that you have to have a certain amount of awareness as well. I think that a lot of times people like and this is gonna piggyback on what Debbie was saying. So if somebody that's my parent that's supposed to love me is beating my ass every time they don't agree with me, some people affiliate that with like, okay, that's part of being in love.
Mhm.
So you have to think of like
The trauma.
the deeper, things that go on. So you just can't be like, wow, you just letting that person beat you, but then yeah, but that person affiliates getting beat with somebody still loving them. So henceforth, it's like, and like you were saying just now about people then passing on, like they choose who they pick on. It's not about. I don't think it's about choice. I think it's about like it's like a it's like being like a having control of a situation, and since you don't have that control all the time, feeling that you have that control now, you're gonna pick on somebody because you know that you can do that. I remember one time, this is a short story, not like Pinky on, short. So what happens is
You
like
kind of guy long there yourself, my boy. Go on.
it's not, you just give like a whole sermon. So I went to the laundry one time to go pick up my clothes. So then this lady was there, and she come up to the counter and had this nasty attitude and was like, "Put your bag then," blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, at first I was going to be like, cuss her and carry on, but like, you know what? This person is acting that way because when they're at home, they have to humble themselves. So when they're in an environment when they have a little bit of control, they're going to exert that. And my mind switched to that, and I was like, "How are you doing?" She was like, she stepped back like, "What?" I was like, "How are you doing?" So I cool. I said, good. I said, that's my bag right over there. She handed me my bag. I paid her and I left her a $5 tip. And she watched me like, what the hell wrong with this dude? Because she's looking for a fight, you know. But then it's just like when I go to like Wendy's and you see the same behavior over and over and over again. These people them don't have no voices where they are. This is their only chance to be like, yeah, I show heat, I this and that. Because when they go home, they have no voice. So see, shorter
I
than
like
motion.
what Nora put up here. She put up that do we have to talk about narcissism, bipolar disorder, and borderline personality? Borderline personality is a very difficult one to talk about because that's rarely diagnosed. I don't. Is there a diagnosis for that, Shelley? Are people dying? And it's very overlooked most of the times. Borderline personality disorder. And a lot of these cases to be the underlying reason for a lot of domestic violence and end up in murders and stuff like that. You want to address those things, Shelley?
But one of the reasons why they're easily diagnosed is because all of them are trauma centered. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Nobody is born mentally ill. Trauma along your lifeline, usually in earlier years, is what sets off a lot of it. You know what I mean? Because your brain changes as you start to develop. And the more trauma that you get, I mean, like, we're not accustomed to holding babies and stuff like that, but attachment is what gives them a way to express themselves. You know what I mean? But we were taught differently. So it's a lot of unlearning from the things that we had. And then when it starts to get into it becoming chemical imbalance, lack of nutrition, and all the rest of it, and so the chemicals start to fire off wrong, and then you start to break it down because those disorders are usually the person that we create to deal with the pain, right? And so when that pain comes up, this part of me comes out. All of us to make a joke, right? I mean, like, I had to make a joke about it. I mean, like, I had it as a serious joke at one point in time. My license plate on my car says Lo Shiba, right? Because I used to tell people, don't let Shiba come out in the cash. Her head ain't no good, right? We make a joke about it because I know that in order for people to be able to do something, you act differently with different people. It's kind of like code switching, right? To use language. This is how serious it gets that we don't realize the things that we do just to make adjustments for the stuff that we can't say or don't feel that we can say, right? We code switch to fit in because we don't want to create a problem, right? The same thing happens in every other thing. When somebody gets to a place where they're having a moment that's bringing up something that was painful that they've never dealt with, they turn into a different person to deal with it. And if they do that often enough, it becomes a chemical change. Like, literally becomes a chemical change. Because your brain's going to function differently if you start feeding it the wrong information all the time. You know what I mean? And so we have to be careful with that. A lot of people who go through those things, the trauma events that they have had in their youth and the age that they had it in their youth is usually what creates a lot of the ongoing problems. Because, I mean, I'll ask you all a question, right? You can, choose to answer whether you want to or not. But how many of you remember the first person that told you something mean, like, you'll never amount to anything, or why you so stupid, or something like that? Do you remember those people?
Never happened. Never.
Hey, wow.
Yeah,
That happened to you, Deborah? I mean,
yeah.
Deborah?
My
Really?
ex-husband. Yep. Because I never heard that growing up.
Hmm.
I never heard that from parent, my mom, my dad, teachers. Never heard it.
All right. Do you remember the first person that told you that you were amazing?
Wow.
When you started going through your life,
It
did
depends on
you
what
remember
context.
the first person
That's what
that
I'm
told you
saying.
that you were amazing? Or do you
Oh,
remember?
cheese on bread.
I'm
That's what
saying,
I'm saying.
I'm saying.
I just had a thought, but I'm not gonna say it. I'm gonna behave myself tonight. I know good
Parents
behavior.
tell you those things, you know what I mean? But what are you
Uh-uh.
looking for here?
No, the thing about it is we usually choose to hold on to the negative things because they have the most effect. We don't remember the first test we passed. Remember the first test we failed. You know what I mean? We hold on to the negative things because it makes us it makes us they have a whole they had a whole movement about it, like haters motivate me. Like, we use bad things to push us forward instead of using the good things to continue to encourage us to do better. We use bad things to push us forward, not to learn the lessons from it, you know what I mean, but that is the motivation to do something else, you know what I mean. And so, because we kind of are ingrained with that slavery coming forward, you know what I mean, you got to be strong. You have to push through. You can't allow yourself to feel. You can't allow yourself to do a whole lot of other stuff because you can't show that you're weak. We have this thing about weakness. I don't really understand it. No, I do understand where it comes from. I don't like it. But, that being weak, how we define weak, means that we're not whole. You can't get strong unless you have been weak. I mean, it's just like you can't have patience unless you wait. You can't be wise unless you've had a quote unquote dumb moment, The things are balanced off of each other, but it's a learning process. And how do we view learning? Because
Right.
that in domestic violence is how you get somebody from one place to the next. That's the conversation you have with them to get them, if you see that they're in an abusive relationship and they're not at the place, reminding them of who they are and reminding them of the goodness of themselves, because self-esteem and self-confidence is two different things. A lot of people are self-confident. They're confident in the things that they do. They have absolutely no clue who they are. They've lost that person. And so, in order to get them to the next level, their self-esteem has to come up. How they see themselves has to come up. Because when you start to see yourself differently or recognize yourself,
Oops.
You
So
know,
it keeps getting good. What
that's
happened?
why, yeah, that's
So
why, that's
let's let us
why, that's why the importance with domestic violence and all of this is through love, compassion, and empathy. She said earlier that a lot of times we blame the victim, right? And then a lot of times in blaming the victim, you go to the court system, the victim is blamed and the person, Shelly's back, thank God. So you go, but I was saying,
it's
a lot.
raining.
I was saying that, a lot of times I feel like the best way in handling this whole domestic violence abuse is by actually true love and compassion and caring instead of judgment, because you were saying in the beginning that a lot of times we blame the victim, especially going to courtroom. The victim is, it's a criminal. So you explained it very well. I'm not going to try to mess it up, like I usually do. And this is the problem. And I think this is the problem why a lot of times people don't come out and speak to other people or let other people know the situation that they're in, because it's, you need to leave. Why are you allowing people to do this to you? You're so stupid. You're so weak. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then in life, sometimes I feel, and this is Eastern teaching, and I don't want to get too far into all kind of stuff, but it's like you said, you have to be weak. You have to embrace the soft with the weak. You can't go up against somebody who beating you with a bat or whatever. You have to figure out a way around it. You know what I mean? And if that means humility and softness to get out of the situation, you have to do what you have to do to get out. But we're taught in our culture, in our society, if he hit you, you got hit it back, and if you don't hit it back, you weak. And so in your mind, these is the things that you're thinking of, and this is the thing that'll lead a lot of young ladies and men in losing their lives. Or you should have leave before, then you want to just pick up and leave, then you leave the wrong way, then you got that shot in your back. You know what I'm saying? Or something like that. So
1 second. Trina, before we go any further, Shemet, you want to read us your poem?
Sure. And I just want to say I appreciate something Pinky was saying earlier when she was pointing out that anyone can be abused, right? It's not limited by your gender or your race or your religion or your socioeconomic status. It's not your age, your sexual orientation, educational level. Like, it can happen to anybody.
And actually, let me just read this. Halima had put, she said, what Lucien says also happens in the workplace with overly aggressive supervisors and micromanagers. So it does happen in the workplace as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like Shelley said, it's power. It's power and control.
Right.
Go ahead, Shemet.
So, well, I'm a Survivor. I was in a relationship for about 22 years. I've been free for about 13 years. So this is a piece I wrote shortly after I got out. It's titled Silent No More. He tried to break me. When I thought I could take no more, he proved he wasn't done. He wanted to crush me, but I'ma shine through it. I'ma soar above all the bullshit. Transcend that tiny bag of tricks. Assume responsibility for my life. I got wings, can't you see? I'm a survivor. I'm already free. My anger is real and justified. Thankfully, thankfully, it's led me to open my eyes. The secret has been revealed. I now comprehend that it's all a game. He thought he was winning at hopscotch, him throwing rocks and me jumping in a box. As I opened the chessboard, I realized none of this is personal. We're at war. And it's a shame because I finally got the rules to this game. Entitlement, control, manipulation are the moves. Acquiescence, keeping the peace is how we lose. But I am silent no more. I must speak for my sisters who can't because of the bullets in their heads or the knives in their chests. I must speak for my sisters who are too afraid and have not yet understood that if they do not walk out, they'll be carried out. I must speak for my sisters who only see the physical and don't yet understand the impact of slowly dying mentally and spiritually. I must speak for my brothers because they are overlooked and disbelieved. I must speak for the children who don't know any other way, who think this is how life is supposed to be lived. I must speak to a system that perpetuates the torture and that holds us in contempt and does not keep us safe. They say a rose by any other name is still a rose. Well, abuse by any other name is still abuse. I am silent no more.
All right.
Girl, I'm glad I got my glasses because I ain't tears behind here. That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. And it was so on the money for any survivor. We know what you're saying is true. It's just heartfelt. It's heartfelt. Beautiful.
That kind of like
That was beautiful, Shamat.
Thank
yeah.
you.
How long after you came out were you able to write that?
I wrote 2010 here, so probably 2 years, but I was angry, right? Like, and I think I was still angry when I wrote that too. But like sometimes I would feel something I wrote a little later than that was that it was a blessing when I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. It took a few years to get there, but when I woke up one day, I was like, oh, I don't have all this anger in me anymore. So, I mean, everything is definitely a process.
So let me ask you a question. So why were you angry?
I was angry. One, I was angry at myself.
Mm.
I was angry for a whole lot of things, but one, I was angry at myself for staying in a relationship for so long when I knew that something was wrong. Or I think we were talking about this last night too. That there's this gaslighting. So I would play into the things that I was being told that everything is my fault or that I'm too sensitive or whatever things are going on. No, that's not really what's happening. You're seeing things wrong. You're not understanding. But I did it and I believed it and I stayed for that reason. I stayed for other reasons because for some strange reason I thought that when you have children with somebody, you should stay married to them because that's best for the children. Especially I have a son. Oh, boys need to be with their fathers, so they should all be in the same house. I'm angry that I believed that because that wasn't true. Because if a child is in a house where there's abuse, that's not a healthy situation for them. It's better to see their parents separate and thriving away from each other than going at each other in the house. And then I'm really angry at my ex-husband too, because I was angry at treatment that he gave us because when I got into the relationship and if I was young, I did have low self-esteem, as Shelly was talking about. There were things in me that allowed me to accept that relationship, but that didn't mean it was right. And that he did this to me. And then because we have children. them angry because I feel like things that were going on affected our children. And so, like, I'm just angry all around.
And your
That was
anger was
that
just
was that was
yeah. Go ahead, Louis. Go ahead.
that was I just want to say that was an amazing piece, and we definitely thank you for bringing that. I mean, I know that must have been quite a hell of an experience and having to go through that, and also bringing awareness and exposing it that you have people that may not even have the courage to actually come out and acknowledge. So I think, and I hope that that in itself, anybody that's listening or anybody that's watching out there, I hope that kind of give them some sort of motivation to actually want to reach out. And I'm sure we're going to get Shelly's, we could put Shelly's information, or at least the Women's Coalition information we can put out for those individuals that need some assistance, but just someone to talk to, someone to listen to. But that was a very, very amazing piece.
Yeah,
Thank
Nora said she she piggybacked on you and she said keeping the peace is how we lose, slowly dying mentally and spiritually. System does not keep us safe. It is all true. Um, but again, it's not even just for who's being abused. It's for people who, like we talked about earlier, bystanders. You've seen something and you don't know how to address it. I spoke to someone.
It's traumatic in itself, yeah.
Yeah, and they told me that years and years ago, they knew that this man was molesting his stepdaughter, and I guess confronted the mom. I'm not exactly sure what was seen, and the mother said, "No, nothing was going on. It's not true." Da, da, da. And then sometime later, the mother saw him someplace. I don't remember, someplace in the street, and was like, broke down and basically said, "I lied. It's true, he is, but I don't know how to, or I didn't know how to come out of this situation because they weren't working." And he was taking care of all the bills in the home, and he felt so bad because he felt like he should have done something. But again, sometimes people don't have the tools. And so it's not just about who's in the relationship, but if you know something isn't right, how, you need to find out, like you're saying, how best to help the situation if you can. If it means you have to report something to create waves, or like you said, if your friends or family to the victim, start to help them with their self-esteem. Because as we learned months and months ago, we had Kanuma and Deborah on, and they talked about sometimes it takes someone 7 times before they leave a relationship, or longer. And so you might not get them to do it, but if you can start to have them change who they are, how they show up, and give them the strength to even be able to want to come out of the situation. So it's not just seeking help for them, but seeking help for the bystanders, so that we can start to change um, that story.
And seeking help for the enablers, those that
I still believe that our biggest powerful action towards people is love, compassion, and understanding, and not judgment. For Shamet, I will say, we think that anger is a bad thing, but it's the anger that gets us to the other side. Because if we don't become angry, we stay stuck. You can't be in that situation and experiencing those things with a smile on your face.
But you know what, Pinky? That I think has to do with, like, I'm gonna say this is gonna be very I think religion plays like a big role in certain things and people's behavior. The turn the cheek and be meek and don't fight and don't do this and don't do that. I think don't leave your husband, don't leave the marriage, stick it out. I think, like, in a sense it's kind of like um one of the reasons why a lot of women stay in these things, you know what I'm saying? Because you're studying the Bible, and the Bible says, honor thy husband, honor this, honor that. And I think, like, the narrative, I think, needs to be updated. You know how they made, like, the remember back in in the Bible at first, you didn't used to fight wars on Sunday. Then Christians were getting massacred. Then they're like, okay, fine, you can fight war on Sundays in the New Testament. You know what I'm saying? So the thing about it is, like, updating the Bible, so it's like, yeah, um, honor thy husband who honors you. You know what I'm saying? And then next thing, um, I think that you have to sit down and really learn yourself and what you're willing and not willing to participate in. Because the majority of females who are in these relationships are dependent on their husbands. You know, I think in today's society, as we said before, partnerships would like kind of cut back on all of the violence because the woman will be more independent. She can more take care of herself. She
But
won't have to
Lucille,
sit.
but
Yeah.
Lucille, you have a lot of women now making more money than the man. So what happens in that situation? And wait a minute. And also piggybacking on what you said, um, Shelly, you need to delve into that a little bit more because she studied theology
Okay.
and she has a perspective on spiritual abuse.
I forgot he
Right.
wasn't here
I
last week.
wanted to add a story to what Lucian was saying. When I would, this was years ago.
Yeah. What? Pinky.
I,
Wait.
Okay, Pinky, hold on. Let Shelly go ahead and
Yeah. Yeah.
finish.
Yeah.
but I want Shelly because I want Shelly to, I'm telling you a story and I want Shelly to talk about the religion. Let me tell
Okay.
the story. The story is very important to why,
Okay, go
and
ahead.
Shelly gonna wrap it up.
Hold your thought, Shelly.
Years ago, when I was in my early 30s, there was a young lady whose husband was a crackhead. And he used to abuse her. And in the church, they were telling her she needed to stay with her husband, knowing that he was an abuser and he was on drugs. And multiple times, they, the pastor included, sent her back into the household. She ended up getting pregnant. And when she got pregnant, he was beating her and he pushed her down the flight of stairs and she lost the baby. This is real. This is what happened. So we were in the meeting, women meeting, and they were talking about this. And I said, do you realize that this man committed murder? Right? But because the baby, it was a baby and it was in the belly, they didn't see it that way, right? And I said, we have to be very careful in the church what we teach people, because we know that this man, and that was my last time going to women's ministry for a bunch of years, for like, I don't know. And I was like, we're telling women, we're telling people things that the Bible says, and we're not applying it to people's life actually. And this caused a murder. So it was in relationship to what you were saying. These things happen all the time. We follow things that is not relatable, that's not applicable to the time, that's not applicable to the situation. And it'll cause a lot of hurt and a lot of pain in people. Shirley, take it away.
So spiritual abuse is one of the abuses that has the most weight, and it's because it attacks what people believe gives them strength, right? One of the things that creates a problem, especially in spiritual abuse, like you were saying, Lucian, and so to what Pinky was saying too, the problem is a lot of times religion picks bits and pieces of the passage, but they don't deal with the whole thing. And if you don't have the whole thing, because a lot of times it's like you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that, and that's not what it says. You know what I mean? But they're going to pick the piece because there's a lot of power and control sometimes in a lot of the churches. It's not about the serving. It's about the power and control and being able to be in a position where you're able to have that given respect, because sometimes the pastors themselves are not okay. A lot of times the pastors are not okay. And so it's easier for them to create, like, you know, like the Jim Jones story. Everybody thought he was wonderful, and then everybody drank the poison, and 50,000 people died. You know what I mean? Because we start to follow blindly. But that is why it's important for us to not only read the whole thing, for ourselves, get the understanding, but we also have to know ourselves. If something makes you feel uncomfortable, there's no way you could have a relationship with God. You can't have a relationship with your higher power if you are not okay. And if you're following somebody else, they have replaced your God. So therefore, it's not God that you're following, it's the person that's leading that you're following. That in itself creates a problem because that person's human. You know what I mean? And so in order for us to get to the next stage, we really have to become more conscious on every level. We have to pay attention. We have to pay attention to the gut feeling, because your innate spirit tells you when something is wrong. I mean, I like to use the the Tarzan baby kind of thing. You know what I mean? When your face starts to go, you know something's wrong. You know what I mean? Like that means your gut is telling you to check yourself. But most of the time, we want to become highly intelligent and we start to rationalize out exactly what we know is wrong. 15 years later, when that same feeling comes back, we recognize I should have done that 15 years before. It would have saved us all of this stuff, right? And everything does happen for a purpose. And I think it's all about a lesson, but it's which lessons that we want to learn. And learning about yourself helps you, one, recognize when you are starting to become a victim because nobody volunteers to be a victim. And you can be victimized even with everything that you've put into place because a lot of times there are traumas that we have hid that becomes a trigger that a predator or a perpetrator would be able to pinpoint because they're looking for your weakness, right? And when you start to get, that's why listening to your gut is important. When you start to get that, you turn your head to the side kind of thing because something just ain't right, you got to pay attention to it. And in paying attention to it, then having the conversation, being willing to have the conversation with somebody. You don't even have to have it with somebody that you know. You mean you can call us, you can call any friend that you have. If you're in the States, they have 1-800 numbers. You can talk to somebody anonymously and just run some stuff past them. But, it also means that we have to not be ashamed of what we're going through. Shame and guilt keeps people in relationships that are not healthy. They keep them in jobs that are not healthy. They keep them with friends that are not healthy. They keep them around family members that are not healthy. Guilt and shame because we're embarrassed. Oh, that's my family. I can't do that. Or, we start to use money as an excuse. You are less productive when you're unhappy. You know what I mean? You can't be creative when you're unhappy. So if you're in an abusive relationship at work or in your house, you're not going to make any money. Your money flow is going to cut down. Not only that, talking about that, just in terms of statistics, businesses lose on average about $33 million a year just on domestic violence issues alone. I mean, so when you want to translate it to money, in paid time off that people have to take and all the rest of it, and the stalking and harassment is coming to the office. If I call my girlfriend phone because I'm insecure, or I call my boyfriend phone because I'm insecure, it's taken away from my job. And so they're supposed to be at work, they're not showing up. I'm going to go because I'm already insecure. I want to know, well, where are you? And I need to control the situation. To touch on that, if anybody calls you too often, figure out why. Because if they ain't doing nothing and all they're doing is keeping tabs on you, it may seem really, really cute at the beginning, but really figure out why. You know what I mean? A lot of the things that, because we want to be accepted, because we want to feel loved, because we want to feel that we're in this la la land relationship, you know what I mean? We skip a lot of things that are blatantly controlling. Don't make the red flags pink and definitely don't make them purple.
So watch out for the clingy ones.
Uh-huh. Because it's going to become trying on you, Louis, literally. If somebody wants to be around you all the time, your productivity is going to stop. If your productivity is going to stop and you're somebody who wants to accomplish stuff, you don't get annoyed with that person.
True.
Can't mess with my people.
True. Um, does the does or are there organizations that actually go into the schools and talk to young people about things like this? Because if people are not having these conversations with their children in the home, long time ago we had PAL, we had all these other programs, but what kind of programs are there now, um, so that like that you have a boyfriend that calling you, and like you said, the young person might think that that's cute, or girl calling the boy all the time, um, but that's really a sign that there's something going on. Like, are there programs that go into the schools?
DVSAC does that. Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Council, they do a lot of that. And sometimes we go and do presentations with them. One of the things that is really, really like humongous right now is all the cyber abuse, like the texting, the phone calls, the videos. Oh my gosh, the videos, people, nothing that you put on the internet disappears. Please, please encourage your children not to send pictures of their bodies. You know what I mean? And have the conversation. You know what I mean? Check the phone if you have to. There really is no privacy when your child ends up dead. You know what I mean? And understand that it's important to talk to them because the World Wide Web gives them information about things that if you're not having the conversation becomes their last say. We really don't want to do that. And catfishing is 100 years old,
Oh,
but
that's a
it's just
big
more
thing.
efficient right now.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because now we give 5 year olds a telephone and we think it's okay. But we're not monitoring what happens on the cell phone. And so next thing you know, they're getting information and then they start to act up and you want to know why they're acting up and you're not having the conversation. So you don't really know why they're acting up, but it's because you stopped being the parent. You know what I mean? Somebody else is passing on the information and we're too busy because we have to work to make money and watch your little brother, or you do this or you do that, and you don't have the time because the absence of time in terms of what we spend with our children, because we were having a conversation yesterday about how much time we spend with family. We love our family, but we don't really like them because we spend an average of 3 to 5 hours with them, not the 8 hours a day that they spend in school and other places. And all their information in a lot of times is coming from someplace else, and we don't have the balance. We have got to create the balance, which means that we need to put more energy into something else. Money is not it. We could have taken the values from the old ways and left the bad stuff. But we lost the values along the way, trying to be better by giving things. You know what I mean? Giving your child $15 million and not teaching them what generational wealth is mean that you've just given them $15 million. They're going to spend it off and there's nothing that's going to happen after that. That makes them dependent on somebody else, but it also makes them feel that all they're worth is money, right? We have got to get around to teaching each other, because even big people sometimes don't get it. We have to get to the conversations so that we start being human, right? It's not a matter of us and them, like we were talking about last night. Everybody is one natural disaster from being homeless, one traumatic event from being mentally ill, and one rage from being a murderer. You know what I mean? All of us. There's nobody that's exempt. You know what I mean? You can do what you want to do, but you never know when that one thing is going to happen that's going to go over the edge. So we have
Hmm.
to look out for each other. We have got to be able to communicate and connect. But in order to connect, we got to be there. You can't connect if you're not present. You know what I mean? And don't doubt yourself. Don't be mad with yourself. Your past life shouldn't be about regret. It should be about lessons learned.
And Debbie, here in New York, there's a program, relationship abuse prevention program.
Mhm.
I know prior to the pandemic, they had people working in middle schools and high schools to work with the youth to teach them to prevent date abuse and abuse, and to learn how to spot things and to speak up if they're seeing even bullying in schools. I'm not sure how that program translated to the pandemic and when everyone went virtual, but I know that was a program that was very prevalent in the city.
That's good.
Shelley,
That's
before you
good.
wrap up, I wanted you to just touch base a little bit on the emotional abuse that people are dealing with online. Like, I don't even know how to say it right now. Just anything you want to say on emotional abuse.
Emotional abuse usually comes from verbal abuse because it's the things that you hear affect how you feel about yourself. And so we have a tendency to talk negative, which is why positive name affirmations are amazing, right? Because it gives you an opportunity to see the good thing in yourself about your own name, by your own name. And it causes you to think about the good parts about you. But emotional abuse comes when people start to mess with that thing that you want the most. Usually it's wanting to belong and wanting to be accepted. You want to feel a connection to somebody. And that's the easiest way to get you in an abusive relationship, is to withhold affection and attention. If I'm not
Mm,
paying any
mm,
attention to you, um, and I'm not giving you any affection, then of course you're going to try to do things because you want to get it. So you're going to be willing. It's the best part of manipulation, really and truly. You know what I mean? But then of course, what happens is that when you stop paying attention, it gets really, really physically and sexually abusive. Because now I figure that if you ain't paying attention to me, what do we usually say? And we encourage the nonsense now. We do usually say, oh, all of a sudden she don't care, she got another man or he got another woman, right? But we skip the part before that. You know what I mean? And it becomes nearly normal for us to say, if they're not responding the same way, they're not giving in, they're not trying to make it work, that they found somebody else. Sometimes they may not have found somebody else, they may have just have found themselves. You know what I mean? And it'd be like, I don't need to put up with this. Why am I if you're going to not talk to me and not when we're having an argument, just generally not talk to me because you want me to do something that I don't want to do it, then you're withholding attention and affection from me. That's going to mess with my heart because I love you and I want you to be close to me. I want us to have a connection. So when you start to do that, my emotions get messed with, right? And that emotional abuse usually comes followed by, ain't nobody gonna love you. Who gonna want you if I children? You ain't see you broken? I just trying to help you out. I mean, like seriously, I trying to help you out. You got all these issues, you have all these issues, and I point up with you. Indicator number one that if they're putting up with you when they think all these things are wrong with you, something's wrong with them. They're telling you about themselves. Pay attention. You know what I mean? But dealing with it means that you really just have to come in tune with yourself. And sometimes that's hard, because we have to admit to ourselves when we've treated ourselves bad. Because self-abuse is really, really nasty.
So
That's another topic for another day.
I like when you
always
say
tell
about
them.
this.
Give me one
Yeah,
second, Vicky.
self-abuse.
I always tell them. I've said this before that when I put in.
He's froze.
I lose interest faster than I got. I mean, I think that's a normal reaction, right?
Right, but say something. Don't ghost people.
Oh no, I ain't gonna ghost. I'm gonna let you know. Oh no, clearly, yeah. Matter of fact, I might be the one that get ghost.
Having the conversation.
But I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna let you know that this definitely is not happening.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we know an hour and a half, and we didn't even. There's a whole bunch of other stuff we haven't touched on, but we are going to wrap it up. But I want to again thank Shelly, and we're going to have her back on again for just again encouraging us to have these conversations so that we can do better. You know better, you do better, right? And I want to thank Shamet again for that poem.
I know, it's so beautiful. Oh my God.
That it just wrapped everything up.
And you said I was in your good poem, or that was your first poem, or something like that. That was amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I want to thank you both for joining us tonight, and thanking our viewers as well for looking on. Encourage your family and friends again to watch this this discussion. We're on YouTube, Love and Enlightenment USVI, because again, you can't do better if you don't have the information to know how to do better. And don't be a bystander that just watches, knows what's going on, and doesn't try to do something. And I want to wish everybody, a safe weekend. And we will be back here next week, Thursday, 8 p.m. Take care.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you, Shelly. Thank you, Shamet.
Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you, Shelly. Thanks, everyone. Wishing everyone good things, great things, beautiful things.
Good night,
Thank you
all.
for watching, guys. Thank you.
Good night.